Ag Bioscience, the #1 ag tech podcast globally, is now available on video. Hear from leaders and innovators across food, animal health, plant science, ag tech, and agriculture. Mondays at 6 a.m. on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. While you're there, subscribe and leave us a review. It's the Ag Bioscience Podcast with Agronovis Indiana. Get more information at agronovisindiana.com.
The internet changed how we work. AI is changing what work gets done. A bank cut loan processing from days to hours. A student built an AI scheduler, improving on-time delivery from under 70% to over 90%. Most teams know AI matters, but aren't sure where to start. InAI is Indiana's statewide AI adoption effort, built with industry, academia, and community partners, helping you move from understanding to action. Visit inaiready.com.
This very special episode of the Pete the Planner Show is brought to you by NeighborServe. You know how home ownership feels sometimes? Something breaks or you want to tackle a project and immediately you're thinking, all right, who do I know? Who do I trust? Where do I start? This feeling is why I use Home Concierge by NeighborServe. They help me understand what a project should cost. They connect me with trusted local pros, and they just tell me where to start, which is what I want. If it feels like having one of those super handy friends is something that interests you, check out NeighborServe. So visit neighborserve.com/Pete for 1 free month of Home Concierge by NeighborServe. Okay, friends, solo episode of the podcast today. I think I'm going to do this from time to time just for some fun. We've done things like story time with Pete. There's the normal show with Kristen and Dame. But sometimes schedules bring us to a point where a man's got to do what a man's got to do. Which I don't know what that means. But today we're going to talk about something I created, I don't know, at least a decade ago. It's called power percentage. So I want to walk you through what power percentage is, why I do it, why we trademarked it, and how by measuring your power percentage, you can actually understand how you're doing financially. Okay, so I got to take you back. A long time ago. Can we just go with 10 years? Okay, can we just go with 10 years? Because I'm going to keep referencing back, and the period of time is going to change. It'll feel like a made-up story. It's not. I just don't have a good memory. Anyway, 10 years ago, 11 years ago, people would constantly say, hey, am I doing okay financially? Because people, you see a priest on a plane and they're wearing a collar and you're like, hey, I stole Snickers from a convenience store when I was 7 years old. You just want to confess. And there was this period in my life, and it still exists today to some degree, just not with the frequency. People see me, especially in my local locale. I mean, sort of where I live, and they're like, hey, I know you. Am I doing okay financially? Let me tell you some things. So it's like this confession. And I would ask some questions to say, how do you think you're doing? And what would inevitably happen is people would begin to measure how they're doing financially in really bad ways. And it would start with income. Okay, so I don't want to do voices per se, but someone would say, hey, how am I doing? And I say, oh, well, we can talk about this. How do you think you're doing? And they may say something like, well, I make $160,000 a year. Then there's a little bit of a pause. Now, what's interesting is whatever the income amount was that they would say was inevitably above average, or below average. So in a vacuum, you could look at that and you say, well, are they doing okay based on, are they keeping up with the cost of living? But the challenge is, once you're at or above the standard cost of living, your income really is not a measure of how you're doing. It's more a measure of what sort of opportunity do you have to do well, right? And I think sometimes when people tell me their income, what they want me to say is, well, based on that income, you don't actually have that much of an opportunity to do well. They want this get out of jail free card. So I think when a person starts to say, how am I doing financially? And if the very first thing that comes into their mind is their income, they're barking up the wrong tree. So I need you to be honest with yourself right now. Just go ahead and ask yourself the question, how am I doing financially? That pause is for you. That pause is for you. Okay, so I'm going to do it again. You got to participate. Why are you even listening to this? Here we go. Ask yourself, how am I doing financially? Okay, when you went to answer, when your brain started connecting the brain pieces, did income come up as one of the first things? Well, we're doing better than we used to. I make about $30,000 more than I used to. If so, boy, am I glad you're here. Next up, when people say, how am I doing financially? If they go, well, we do have $360,000 saved for retirement. Okay, I'll say this is a slightly better thing because what you're in this case describing and is not the ammunition you have on a monthly basis to spend money, like your income. What you're describing is the amount of stability that you have access to. Assets are, in some sense, stability as long as your spending is under control. But in the words of Patrick Ewing during the NBA lockout in the 1990s, and Patrick Ewing was a center for the New York Knicks, the new world champion New York Knicks. As a Pacer fan, that is a horrible thing to say and to believe and to feel. Anywho, Patrick Ewing, Hall of Fame center, was trying to get the fans back on their side because of the NBA lockout. And he said, what fans need to understand is we may make a lot of money and have a lot of money, but we spend a lot of money too, which is why both income and assets aren't necessarily the best measure of how you're doing financially. I mean, I've met people, you've met people, you may not know the numbers, but I've met people who've got hundreds of thousands of dollars in terms of assets, and they did nothing to get the hundreds of thousands of dollars of assets other than outbreathe somebody. It was an inheritance, or it was a gift, or their parents just set them up, right? But they didn't do anything. And so they could look at that account and they go, oh, we're doing great. Are you? Are you doing great financially at that point in time? Another way to think about this too, the third way people think about this is debt, okay? So when someone in the I don't want to be in debt community, which is a big community. I mean, Dave Ramsey, by all means, popularized the idea that debt is evil, debt is a character flaw, and that shame shall succumb you. I don't know, is that the right verb? Probably not. But debt is a problem, and if you have it, it's a character flaw. I don't believe that to be true. I also don't believe that if someone doesn't have debt, they're financially stable. I do believe that their margin for error is larger, meaning they can make mistakes if you don't have debt and eventually be okay. But I don't believe the absence of debt makes one very financially stable. I'll also say this, every day, my company, we help hundreds of thousands of people with their financial lives through their employers. So we get to talk to a person or two in the course of a day. We see people all the time with debt, with credit card debt, home equity loans. We see personal loans, we see car loans, yet they're building substantial assets. I mean, I think about my own situation is I owe some money on my mortgage. And if I was trying to live the debt-free lifestyle aggressively, what I would do is I would bust my hump to get out of debt quickly. But context matters. The context of my debt is that it is a 2.5% mortgage. I am in no hurry to pay that thing down. Why? Well, if I'm getting about 4% on my money market, I think I'm getting about 4% right now, and I have an extra dollar come into my household, I would rather gain 4% than to get rid of a 2.5% interest cost that I have. So debt, again, is not the best measure of how you're doing financially. Are you tracking? Here's the funny thing about me being dramatic with are you tracking right there. You've either bailed at this point or you're in. Because I haven't even gotten to where we're going. The final way that people typically get into this, and they say, I go, how you doing financially? And they'll go into their brain and they'll pull open the file cabinets. Do you ever do that? I've done this for as long as I can remember as an adult. If I'm hit with a question that kind of takes me off guard, And the answer is not at the tip of my brain. I have this vision of like this little man inside my head pulling open file cabinets and like just pulling the file up a little bit so they can see the label on the file, and then shoving it back down, and then looking for another one, shutting that cabinet. Anyway, when someone asks you how you doing financially, and your little guy is pulling open the drawers, I have found that people will often answer that question based on their mood, based on their vibe. Let's say that morning they went to the vet, not someone who fought in a war, but someone who repairs your dogs and cats. Okay, you go to the vet, and the vet pronounces something you can't pronounce and says, this is going to be $930 for your cat, Jingles. And so you're in a bad mood because you don't even like Jingles. Jingles was your boyfriend's cat, and your boyfriend's gone. But Jingles is not gone. Jingles is now your responsibility. $900 and some dollars, I don't remember the number. And so you're in a bad mood. And so if I see you that afternoon, I'm like, how's it going? How's Jingles? And you say, oh, things are rough right now. They're not necessarily rough. Your financial life is not necessarily going poorly. You just, it's the same thing. Like, let's say today is payday, and I see you, and I'm like, how's it going? And you just got reloaded. Pretty good. Or let's say you're on 26 pay, which is you get a paycheck every other week. And it's one of those 2 special months in which you get a third paycheck. And I say, how's it going? You're like, we're killing it. You're not. Just feels that way. So these are the ways that people typically measure how they're doing financially. How's my income? How are my assets? What's my level of debt? And what's the vibe? I, like you, have used those things to measure my finances as well, but I have to tell you there's a much better way, which is why we're doing this podcast today. Oh my gosh, that rhymed. It's called power percentage. So there's 2 possible origin stories for power percentage, if I'm being honest with you. One of these things happened, but like many a great old man, I don't remember which one is true. I could be a version of both. Okay, so here's the story of how this came to be, I think. There's one of 2. There's one of the 2. So I went to lunch with a friend over Christmas time. A nice lunch. We had a bottle of wine at lunch. Now, if you're thinking, boy, I got to stop listening to this. That is sinful. I don't know. Anyway, we were sitting there. It's a long lunch. We were both big wine drinkers at the time. So we're having lunch, and he's a good friend, but he's asking me financial stuff. And this is sort of when I did more financial stuff as opposed to just run the company. And he's like, could you help me answer the question of how I'm doing financially? Now, what's funny about this in the modern era is every financial wellness company or 401k company's got some proprietary metric that does this, some sort of retirement confidence score, retirement readiness score, something like that. Well, there wasn't a lot of those back then when this person asked. And so he and I started talking, and I went back to my office with some wine in me, and I started creating. And I came up with this. So that's one possible origin story of how this happened. The other one feels possibly more true, but I don't remember. So my wife and I were at dinner, also drinking wine. Gee, man, Christmas. But it wasn't Christmas. And it was it was a period in our life where, like, at the end of the year, between Christmas and New Year's, we would go to dinner, and we would that's when we would have like our annual big financial conversation. We're like, how did the year go? What's going on? And I remember saying to her, kind of giving her the report, the progress report. I said, okay, well, we made more money this year, and we saved more money too. And I'm like, okay, let's get some appetizers, whatever. And she just real quick, she goes, oh, well, we saved more money dollar-wise or percentage-wise? And I was like, well, dollar-wise. And she goes, what about percentage-wise? I was like, I don't know, actually. Let me get back to you. And so it's under that principle of that we get to power percentage. And here's how it works. Now that I've buried the lead 13 minutes into this sucker. Your power percentage is how much of your monthly income is going toward moving your financial life forward. Let's say it again. Your power percentage is what percentage of your gross, meaning pre-tax, monthly income goes towards moving your financial life forward. Here's another way to think about this. See, every month, no matter what the frequency of how it arrives, you have income bestowed upon you. It's so passive. No, you have earned income or whatever. You got monies coming in. Now, you have some tax obligations. You got some needs. But then what you do with it, whether you're paying for your past in terms of getting out of debt, or you're a lifestyle guy or gal or whatever, you're just spending money on wine at lunch at holidays, or you're trying to make tomorrow easier. Side note, I love the concept of making tomorrow easier. At some point in time during your day or your week or your month or even a year, opportunity comes upon you, and you can either take that moment of relief and say, I'm going to make this moment easier. I'm going to exhale. I'm going to take this, whether it's money or whatever, I'm going to make this a little bit easier right now. Or what you can say is, all right, I was at a normal state, then something really good happened, so now I'm in a really good state. But I also remember times when I'm not in a really good state. And I don't mean like New Jersey. I mean just like a state of being. No offense, New Jersey. I haven't spent much time in you. Okay. Anyway, there's times when you're just not in the best state. And so when the good times are there, wouldn't you rather level everything out by making tomorrow easier? That's the concept of power percentage, is truly measuring it. So I want you to think of all the ways in which your income can move your financial life forward. Okay? Now, within this, I have my own rules. I got to be honest with you. I have my own rules. Some of them don't make sense. I've had people argue about this with me for the better part of 10 years, if not 13, but no one knows. So write this down. I guess I could put this in the show notes. That seems like a lot of work. Okay, write this down. I want you to add up the dollars. Okay, so we're talking power percentage. We're going to convert this to a percentage at the end. But what I need you to do is to mark down everything in dollars that we're about to cover. And the other aspect of this is we're talking monthly dollars. It's going to take a little bit of work, but you got an iPhone, so you can do it. Monthly dollars. Here's the list. How many monthly dollars of your gross income go to retirement contributions? This can be any type of retirement contributions. This can be pre-tax, post-tax. I don't really care, but I need monthly dollars. At no point in time are we talking balances today. So we are talking contributions, not contributions/deposits. We are not talking balances. We are not talking about debt balances. We're not talking about 401k balances. We're not talking about savings account balances. For the balance of the show, we will not talk about balances. Contributions. So let's say you make 100,000 American dollars and you are putting away 5%. Oh, okay, let's go 6%. You're going 6%. So you are putting away $6,000 on a regular basis, okay? That means you're putting away $500 a month. Next on the list, the dollars that your employer is putting towards your retirement in the form of an employer match. Okay? Calculate the dollars. Typically, you think about this one as a percentage. You typically think about your retirement contributions as a percentage, but I need you to also look at your employer match and add those dollars to your now 2-item total. Now, here's the interesting part and why I include it. Because how you choose where you work matters. Like if you've got 2 equally interesting jobs that you're choosing from, and one has a 7% employer match and one has a 4% employer match, and they're equal other than that, choose the 7% job. It's a better idea. All right, health savings account deposits also, whatever dollar amount monthly goes in. Now, for any of these that you view it more as an annual contribution, just divide by 12. Do you do any regular brokerage investing? Do you just invest in crypto or the markets? Again, we're not talking balances. We're talking about regular contributions. If every 3 years you're putting $2,000 in Ethereum, you don't include that. But if you're dollar cost averaging into Dogecoin, A, what? B, whatever that dollar amount is, it's not being spent. It is going towards the future, so you get to add that in as well. Now, this is where things get real tricky, real fast. The dollars going towards paying down your mortgage principal. As you know, your mortgage payment is a few different pieces. It's principal, which is what you borrowed and you need to pay back. Your payment also consists of interest, which is the cost of borrowing. And then there's property taxes and insurance, that escrow amount. All I care about right now, and this is going to require some work, is what dollar amount per month is actually reducing your debt to your bank. People love to give me a lot of trouble because I physically pay my mortgage in person at a bank. I drive there, I waste time, and I do it. And one of my favorite parts is I get these little yellow receipts when I make my payment. And every month, I've got a stack of them. I can see how much the principal of my mortgage, my loan, was reduced from month to month. That would be the monthly amount. So you get to add that to your list. We're adding up all of these things I'm talking about in dollars monthly, and then we're going to do something with them. Student loan principal. If you're paying down student loans, what amount is your debt going backwards every month? You get to include that. Medical debt reduction. You get to include that. Savings. If you're putting money into savings, you get to include that. Again, monthly dollars. College savings. Are you putting $200 a month into a 529 plan? Then you include that. And if you happen to be in credit card debt, then you can include what the total debt is reduced by over a given month, as long as you don't turn around and re-increase it. If you are, re-increase is so not a word, brother. If you are the sort of person that uses your credit card for everything and pays it off at the end of the month, do not, under any circumstance, include credit card payments towards your power percentage. You can only include it if you are in debt and are climbing out of debt. If you are in debt and you want to climb out of debt but aren't climbing out of debt, do not include it. You cannot lie to yourself with power percentage and get away with it. It will mess everything up. And finally, the one that angers everyone. Oh man, this angers everyone. You cannot include car payments. Do car payments get you out of debt? Yeah. For an asset that decreases in value. Okay, so we are not including car payments. Get mad if you want, but you can't include them. Add all of these things up. Add all of them up. Okay, so you're going to have a monthly dollar amount that you've just added up of all these things. It probably is going to take you 15 minutes or so to track all this garbage down. Then figure out what your gross monthly income is. Okay, so if you've got a salary, let's say it's 100,000 American dollars. I'll do the math for you right here on the pod. Divide by 12, that's $8,333. And that, my friend, is your gross monthly income. Okay, so let's say for a second, you add all these things up and you are at $3,200. $3,200 is what all this adds up. And your gross monthly income is $8,333 because you make $100,000. What you do is you take other things, you add it up, and then you divide it by your income, and that is your power percentage. Unless it's your first day on earth or you haven't taken middle school math, the percentage is going to show is going to have a decimal point and then some numbers after it. And as you know, the way percentages work and this whole thing works, and sometimes we forget this, but you shouldn't, just move the decimal spot 2 places to the right, and that's the percentage. Okay? So in my example of $3,200 of all these things that move you forward, they pay down debt, Because let's remember what net worth is. Your net worth are your assets minus your debts. So there's a few ways you can increase your net worth. You can increase the number of assets you have, or you can reduce the number of debts you have. And doing either of those things increases your net worth. Now, other things increase your net worth, like increases in market value of whether it's a home or a whatever, stock. But in this case, we're talking about what are you actively doing with your income? So if I were to see you on the street and say, how's it going? And you are a power percentage patron, I don't know. The best way to answer my question is with your number. So let's talk about what these numbers mean and what you do with it. So today, hopefully you do this today, when you calculate it, I'm going to tell you whether it's good or bad or something like that. But then what really matters is what happens to your power percentage over time. If you calculate all this and your power percentage is under 10%, that's a problem. It's not a character flaw. You're not dumb. It just means, A, if you know you're in trouble and this is validation, you're right. Like maybe you felt like things are super tight and you're not really moving forward. And then you calculate this and you're like, well, yeah, I guess I'm right. Another scenario there is that you think you're doing fine because you're loving it. You're going to McDonald's every day and you have a nice car and you go on a nice vacation and you enjoy yourself good quesadillas from time to time with the carne, asada. So you spend money all the time because you got a big income, maybe even have money in savings. This is the interesting part. Let's go through the 4 ways that people typically imagine how they're doing financially. Make a good income, check. I use it to buy carne asada. Got money in savings, check, I'm doing fine. Got no debt, check, I'm doing great. What's the vibe? I'm vibing, things are good, all this beef. But your power percentage could be under 10%, which means you are not doing fine, which is why those 4 things I listed are not good measures of financial success. Under 10% is danger. 11 to 20% is okay. All right, clearly 11 is okay and 20 is better than okay, but it's still okay. Big range, but it's okay. Talking big range, how about this one? 21 to 34% is healthy. Can I give you a little bit of a cheat before we go much further? This is just like the ultimate cheat here. A quick understanding of how you're doing with your power percentage is simply just think about your 401k contribution percentage plus your match. And right there, you're going to tell you what your base power percentage is. If I make $100,000, I'm putting away 6%. My boss is putting away 4% on my behalf. That means 10% of my income is going towards the future. And with just those 2 elements alone, I'm at 10%. If all you're putting money in is to your 401k and you're putting in 4%, your employer's putting in 4%, that total is 8%, and you're not paying down debt, you're not saving any other money, then your power percentage is 8%, and that's a problem. 21 to 34% is pretty good. Once you get over 35%, you're killing it, brother. You're killing it. 35% is mastery. Another question I get a lot is, am I able to retire? Do you think I'm good to go? Well, I'll tell you this. If your power percentage is 35% or more, yeah, you probably are pretty darn close to being able to retire if the assets is right. You are able to retire when you have enough assets to create the amount of income you need to survive, and you do the smart things with your income. If prior to retiring, 35% of your money is going towards making tomorrow easier, then when tomorrow gets here, you'll only need 65% of your money. It's not any more complicated than that. So, how do you really use this? I think that when you get a raise, or you make a spending decision, or you take on a payment or an obligation or travel, sports, or ballet lessons, and you see what it does to your monthly obligations in relation to your income. you could see your power percentage dip. I've seen people get $10,000 raises and watch their power percentage go down. That's bad. Not bad as in like you're a terrible person or you're dumb. It just means you fell asleep at the wheel. I think sometimes too, when we take a lot of questions on this show about, hey, we just had a kid, can we pause retirement contributions or whatever. If that's the case, just look at your power percentage and say, is it gonna dip just a couple points? Is it going to fly down? Does it stay flat? I think anytime you get a raise, you have to redo your power percentage. I like to recalculate my power percentage every 6 to 12 months. I think is the perfect way to understand how you're doing financially. If you live your financial life with your sweetie or your wife or whatever, combine your incomes and have a household power percentage. I don't know, called me old school here, but I think having a household power percentage for people who've been together with their partner for a long time and have shared finances just makes more sense than individual power percentages. My wife and I have shared our finances for 26 years. It just makes no sense for us to have individual power percentages. If you found your relationship later in life and you'd had an established way of being an adult financially, then go ahead and have separate ones if you want. I just don't see the point. And if you're single, absolutely have a good power percentage, and also list your power percentage on your dating profile on Hinge. All right, that's what we got. Solo episode, power percentage. That's it. Wasn't that bad, I think. If you like this episode and you want me to go deeper dives into actual things of personal finance without Dame and Kristen distracting me with their jokes, email me, askpete@petetheplanner.com. askpete@petetheplanner.com. Do you want more like this? Hit me on the socials too. I like this episode, or like, nah, too much Peter in my ear. Didn't like it. Anyway, that's what I got for you. Stay getting money.
Do you want the real scoop on what's happening in Indiana business? Check out the IBJ podcast. I'm Mason King, and each week I sit down with people who make news in Indiana to get insights and perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. It's business, but you won't need an MBA. The guests run the gamut from CEOs, developers, and sports executives to artists and chefs and financial planners. If there's a theme, it's that everything has a cost. And success often depends on how you define profit and loss. So if you want to deepen your understanding of the people and projects shaping Indiana, give the IBJ podcast a try. You can find it at ibjpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Your commute just got smarter. Turn drive time into growth time. The IBJ Media Podcast Network gives you front row access to leaders shaping Indiana's economy, culture, and future. No filler, just smart, relevant, local storytelling you won't get anywhere else. Find all of our shows by searching IBJ Media in your podcast app or visit ibjpodcasts.com.